So today for background building, we are going back to that freezing place called the Arctic. And we're going to learn about how people live there, which is cool because I don't know how people live there because it's so cold. But today we are all going to find out. All right. Arctic. People in the Arctic. Alaska. So we're going to learn all about how they survive, the clothes that they need, how they build their home, and everything like that. So we know that every ecosystem that we have learned about, people have also lived there. So humans can live in the Arctic even though it is really cold. This is Alaska, and there are towns. Sorry, Wendell's entering. In Alaska, there are towns that are in the Arctic tundra. How do you think people can survive in such cold weather? The people who live here, they face a dangerous polar climate in the winter. Now remember, the sun doesn't come up all the way in the winter. The weather is below freezing, the coldest it's ever been. We have never felt weather this cold before. And think about how cold we've been in our winter. So from November through January, the sun never rises high enough to light the sky. So it's dark for the winter. The 65 days of polar night. So there are whiteout conditions. Whiteout is when everything is white. You can't see anything. Everything looks white because the snow is so thick and it's covered everything around them. So imagine you are living in Alaska in the Arctic tundra, and then suddenly everything turns white. How are you going to find your way home? How can you find your way home when everything is white and you can't see? Jayla?
Trails.
Trails, maybe you can see some footprints and follow it. I like that. So we know that the weather is freezing and the ground is frozen. Remember the permafrost? The ground is frozen. There are no trees. But people wanted to live there, so they had to engineer or build a solution, some way that can let them live there. So they needed to build things to keep them warm, they needed a home, and they needed ways to travel when it was really icy on the ground. So let's find out what they did. We know that they needed to stay warm. Everyone needs to stay warm to survive. So they needed the correct clothing. People can get frostbite and be really, really hurt by the cold. So how do you think people living in the Arctic stay warm? How can they stay warm? Alana?
Warm sweater.
Wearing sweaters? Definitely, like we wear sweaters. I wear a sweater every day because it's cold. Well, inside is cold, not outside. All right, let's see what else they do. The Inuit, these are the people that live in the Arctic. They're called the Inuit people. They have lived in Alaska for a very long time. more than 1,500 years. So they are the first people to learn how to keep themselves warm by studying how the animals keep themselves warm. So we're seeing this a lot in all of the ecosystems that we learned about. The people who want to live there, they look at the animals and they study the animals and how the animals survive, and then they try to copy them so they can survive too. Animals with really, really thick fur, like the caribou or the reindeer, provide warm pelts to sew into clothing. So their fur clothing protects them from the icy temperatures. So here are some of the problems that they faced and some of the solutions that they came up with to fix the problem. So the problem was they needed to keep their head and the face warm. So they made furry hoods that cover as much of the face as possible and sometimes even block the wind. Another problem was that sometimes they'd become too sweaty and they would overheat when they're working really hard, like trying to build their home. So the solution was they built flaps in their jacket to easily cool down. Kind of like how we have zippers in our jacket when we get hot, we can open it up. That's like a flap. Another problem was they had to keep the body heat all inside so they can stay warm. They didn't want the body heat to escape. So the solution was they built layers into the jackets that trap the body heat like a blanket. It's like a big cozy blanket. Another problem was they needed to keep their feet warm, and not only just warm, but also dry, because if they're stepping in the snow, you know that snow melts and you get wet. And when your feet are wet or your hands are wet, they get freezing cold. And that's how you can get frostbite and get really, really hurt. So they had to build their boots that had really thick bottoms, and they do a lot of cool things with shoes and ways to travel around the snow and the ice. We're going to learn about it. Today, Inuit people wear fur clothing, and they also buy clothing made with materials from outside of the Arctic. So that's good. So they're not using all the animals in the Arctic. They're also buying clothing. The design of today's cold weather clothing is inspired by the Inuit solutions of the cold. So the Inuit people were the first people. They learned how to survive the cold. So then we kind of copied them, and we were like, okay, so we're going to make our jackets like that too, to keep us warm. Here are some other problems that they faced, and then the solutions. How did they fix the problem? So they need to keep the head, face, and warm. So we have hoods, hats, scarves, and balaclavas that cover the face. Becoming too sweaty and overheated when working hard. So there's zippers and layers, and the jacket is like quick drying. So if it gets wet with snow or water or ice, it will dry quickly. So keeping the hands, feet, and warm. We have some mittens, and then there are also hand and feet warmers, and some thick waterproof boots, like Amelia's rain boots that she has. So people needed the clothing to stay warm, but they also need a home. So let's find out how they built their homes. They had to use what was around them, just like everyone else in every other ecosystem. So there wasn't a lot of stone or wood because there was no trees. So they actually had to use the top layer of the dirt, grass, and roots called sod. They cut the sod and then stacked it to make walls. Sometimes they even built their shelters right into the sides of hills for extra protection from the cold. And I remember the people in the desert used to build their homes out of sod. Inuit people also built tents out of animal skins, and they would put the skins over whale bones. Sometimes they covered the outside of these homes with packed snow. So believe it or not, when you put snow, that is freezing cold ice, together, it will keep the heat inside, just like an igloo does. Now, when you go inside of a big igloo, it's not very cold. It's keeping the heat inside. So the snow made a barrier to keep the heat from escaping, and it would protect the people from the wind. But today, most people that live here, they have houses built in other parts of the world, and then they get delivered to Alaska in small pieces, and then they work and put it together like a big puzzle. But there is one other problem that the people in Alaska have to face when they're thinking about building their home. The permafrost, the frozen layer that's on top of the soil, they have to think about that when building their house, because a warm house will melt the permafrost and the ground will become soft because it's soil, and the house will start to fall down. So they couldn't put the houses right on the ground because it would melt, and the house would fall or sink because it would melt the ice. So they had to build their home on stilts. They built the home above the ground, so that way the house is not actually touching the ground. Another challenge that the people face is that the ground is always covered in snow and ice, which makes getting around difficult. Because walking on ice is not very easy. Have you tried to walk in the snow or the ice and you walk really slow and you try to be careful? What was it like if you ever walked on ice? Have you? Jayla?
I fell on the steps.
Yeah, ice is slippery and dangerous. So we have to think about how the people who live in Alaska dealt with this, because it's not easy to walk on ice. Animals in the Arctic have adapted special features for moving on the slippery ground. Just like every animal that we've learned about, they adapt to their surroundings and their bodies help them survive in the area that they live in. So the paws of the polar bears and the foxes have long claws and they're covered in fur. This helps them get a good grip on the ice and snow so they don't fall everywhere. And the fur keeps them warm. Engineers in the Arctic have taken their inspiration from animals. So they look at the animals and they say, hey, what can we build that's like the animal? So they designed this. And this is called a metal crampon. And you put it on like a shoe. You put it on top of your shoe. And it helps people grip the ice like animals. Look at the crampon. What part of it is like the animal that lives in the Arctic? Amelia?
It looks like it sort of looks like they have claws on them, so
Yep.
they grip onto the ice.
Exactly. Exactly. And people do that a lot. They study animals so they can be like them and survive like them. Even our ninjas, back when we learned about our ninjas. This is the feet of the caribou and the musk oxen. Their hooves are wide, so the animal does not sink into the snow. So they have bigger feet. They're also concave, which means that they're shaped like an upside down bowl. Only the outside of their foot would have to touch the ground. So that's really cool. Based on hooves and other Arctic animal feet, people in Alaska built these cool snowshoes to walk in the deep snow. They're wide and it allows someone's body weight to be spread across something larger so you don't just sink in with your little tiny feet. And there are a lot of people still working on how to build the perfect snowshoe. What? There are skis and ice skates too. Believe it or not, skis have been around for thousands of years, and they let people slide across the ice without sinking into the ice. So they just slide. Like, that sounds fun. I've never gone skiing. Then we have our ice skates. They're sharper. They're not as flat as skis are, but they still let you slide across the ice. So imagine you are on an expedition in the Arctic. What are you going to wear on your feet so that you can travel across it easily? What would you wear? Jayla?
You would wear like those shoes with the pointy stuff under it.
Yeah, yes, those are called the crampons. I wear those too with my big snow boots. All right, let's go and do our syllables. Alaska. Alaska. Inuit. Inuit. Fur coat. Fur coat. Sod. Sod. Snowshoes. Snowshoes. Stilts. Stilts. Musk ox. Musk ox. Crampons. Crampons. Arctic fox. Arctic fox. All right, boys and girls, let's think about what was really cool today. What was super interesting to you? What did you learn? What did you learn? Jaden?
I learned about the yeah.
Say it.
I can't say it again. The Arctic YSL in the bottom.
The Arctic?
Yeah,
What?
I saw on the bottom. The wolf. I saw the wolf. We did our syllables. It was in the.
Oh, okay. The Arctic fox.
Yeah.
All right, so you learned about the Arctic fox.
Bye, I love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye. Jayla,
The Arctic fox.
what's your message going to be today?
Into the people. The first people. And the last one.
Perfect. All right, Jayla, we will see you later.
I love you, Miss Mara.
I love you too, Jayla. Giovanni,
Is I learned about the Arctic fox is white.
okay, there you go. 8 lines, you got it. See you later, Giovanni.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Giancarlos,
I learned about the Arctic fox.
okay, all of the boys always love the animals that come on, so it's okay. All right? All right, Giancarlos. Emilia,
People live in the Arctic. Wow. And they walked across ice on snowshoes.
I like it. We did talk about the snowshoes for a long time. All right, Emilia, I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Alana,
The people get warm with the fuzzy sweater.
Fur coats.
Fur coat.
the people stay warm with the fur coats. Perfect. That is important.
See you later.
See you later. Bye-bye. Wendell, what are you going to write today?
We had to keep our heads cold. High.
Yes, we have to keep our heads warm. There you go. All right, go write your message.
And our face.
And our face. Go write your message.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.